Sawadee-kap. Hello and welcome to Daily Wisdom, Walking the Path with the Buddha. Today is our Pali Canon and English study group, and we're studying the words of the Buddha in this book series titled The Words of the Buddha, The Path to Enlightenment, Revealing the Hidden. I'd like to welcome all of you, whether you're tuning in for the first time or you've been attending regularly this particular program. We're in Volume 11, Chapters 21 through Chapters 30. These chapters are all related to the realms of existence, and specifically these chapters are related to the realm of hell. This is where the Buddha is actually helping you to understand these specific realms of the hell realm, the animal realm, the afflicted spirit realm, the human realm, and the heavenly realm. Today we're going to be studying chapters related to the realm of hell, and it's important to understand that when the Buddha is sharing these teachings, he's never interested in guilting you, shaming you, or fearing you into learning and practicing his teachings. Instead, he's just describing to you what happens in hell and how an individual would get to hell, because these are part of the natural laws of existence that he taught. And it's important for you to understand these so that you can understand if you start experiencing contact with beings from the hell realm, you will understand what that is. Or if you start having residual memories of your experiences having been in hell in previous existences. This will help you to maintain your contentedness and your peacefulness, realizing that these things are completely normal. So I'd like to welcome you all to the class today and invite you to participate by, if you're in Zoom, you're welcome to read any of the chapters that we're going to be sharing. Then I'm going to share some teachings on that chapter and then open up to any and all questions that you guys have. If you're in Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, you can ask questions as we go by putting those into the comment section, or you can electronically raise your hand in Zoom and ask any questions or follow-up questions directly. If nobody volunteers to read, I'll just read the chapters and help you guys understand what the Buddha is sharing here in his discourses related to these chapters. So this first chapter, 21, by the way, these books, you can download them from our website by going to buddhadailywisdom.com. From there, you can download them and read them either before class and or after class. And then when you come to class, you can ask questions about any of the chapters that we're reading and studying in a particular day. So this is more of a study group versus the other programs that I teach that are more of helping you to build a foundation in the teachings that lead to enlightenment. So this first chapter is titled Doomed to the Deprivation in Hell for an Eon. Monks, conquered by three forms of false teachings, his mind overwhelmed, Devadatta, which is the cousin or brother-in-law of Gotama Buddha, is incurably doomed to deprivation in hell for an eon. What three? Conquered by unwholesome desires, his mind overwhelmed, Devadatta, is incurably doomed to deprivation, to hell for the duration of an eon. Conquered by friendship with unwholesome people, his mind overwhelmed, Devadatta is incurably doomed to deprivation, to hell for the duration of an eon. And there being something further to be done, he nevertheless stopped halfway with a low degree of distinctive attainment. Conquered by these three forms of false teachings, his mind overwhelmed, Devadatta is incurably doomed to deprivation, to hell for an eon. Okay, so here the Buddha is talking about a student of his who was actually his cousin or brother-in-law during his lifetime. And this individual had ordained with the Buddha to learn the path to enlightenment, but as he ordained, he was always very jealous and envious of the Buddha. He had a certain amount of anger and hostility in his mind. He wanted to be the Buddha. He wanted to lead the community. He saw the group of students of the Buddha continuing to grow and grow and grow, and he wanted to kind of eliminate the Buddha in order to take over the community. And there's actually documentation in the Pali Canon where his cousin or brother-in-law, Devadatta, actually attempted to kill the Buddha, at least on 2 different occasions. That is documented there. So the Buddha here is talking about certain things that have led to this individual that is now going to end up being reborn in hell in his next rebirth. And the Buddha sharing this is then able to help you understand why an individual would be reborn in hell, so that then you aren't doing those things. And you can cultivate your mind in such a way that you're not reborn into hell. Because now that you're in this human existence, this is the best, most ideal time for you to be able to get to enlightenment. So if you can learn from this discourse the three things that the Buddha is describing as leading to this individual being reborn in hell, then you can ensure to do just the opposite so that you're not reborn in hell. In fact, it'll help you get closer to enlightenment and potentially not even be reborn anywhere in the 5 realms of existence. So here, the Buddha is saying that his cousin or his brother-in-law is essentially overcome by these unwholesome desires. What he's talking about here is sensual desire. If the mind has sensual desire, which is that 4th fetter, then there's the potential for one to be reborn in hell, depending on what extreme the sensual desires are in the mind, what amount of craving, desire, attachment is in the mind. Because these realms of hell, animal realm, afflicted spirit, human realm, and heavenly realm, these realms aren't permanent existences. And for an individual who has an extensive amount of craving, desire, attachment, or sensual desire, they would need to be reborn into those lower realms in order to burn off some of those cravings so that they can then be reborn in other realms with the potential to get to enlightenment. So an individual who has an extensive amount of craving, desire, attachment is going to then lead to an extensive amount of anger and hatred and bitterness to the point of being interested to kill somebody, right? So his cousin actually tried to kill him on 2 different occasions that I know of. That's documented in the Pali Canon. So in order to be interested to kill somebody or wanting to kill somebody, you would need to have an extensive amount of sensual desire, which is then going to lead to the ill will arising, this anger, hatred, bitterness, hostility, resentfulness. So you can train your mind to eliminate those things as you see them arising. You can use the Eightfold Path to cut them off and let them go so that you don't allow this to continue to exist in the mind. Then the Buddha is describing here that he's conquered by friendship with unwholesome people or overwhelmed by these unwholesome friendships that he's making. The Buddha teaches in various parts of his teachings, and he really emphasizes the priority of developing wholesome relationships around you. And the reason why he's doing this is because if you have wholesome friends, then as you're associating with those individuals, your mind's going to tend to lean in that direction. Whereas if you have unwholesome relationships with people that are into unwholesome things, then your mind's going to tend to lean in that direction. So it's really wise to make friends with people who are into wholesome things. And you need to do that without judgment, where you're not looking down on somebody and trying to determine whether they're wholesome or unwholesome in terms of a judgmental way and putting yourself above them or below them, but instead using discernment, which is wise decision making of whether or not it would be wise for you to associate with this individual. If somebody's into unwholesome things, that's their decisions and they're going to affect them. But if you decide to be friends with that individual, that's when it starts affecting you based on the decisions that they make. So for example, if you have a friend from maybe when you were 10 or 12 years old, and you're still in that relationship and holding on to that relationship, maybe now you're in your 20s or 30s or 40s, and maybe you know that they've always been selling drugs and having difficulties in that area, and say you've decided to be their friend and you continue to be their friend. Well, now you could be driving in your car, the police could pull you over, your friend's next to you, and maybe they slip some drugs under your seat. Or maybe you're walking down the street and a rival drug dealer sees your friend and you walking down the street, and now they're trying to kill your friend. So they pull out a gun and start trying to shoot that person. And maybe you end up getting murdered because of that. So you can actually get arrested by the police. You can get murdered in this situation, all from associating with unwholesome people, which is now going to affect you. So it's wise to select friends who are into wholesome things. And some suggestions that I can give you in this area is that any kind of relationships that you're forming, you would like to have politeness, kindness, friendliness, and respect. You to them and those people to you. Understanding that if you meet somebody in a relatively short period of time, if they're impolite, unkind, unfriendly, and disrespectful, it would be unwise for you to potentially continue forward in this relationship. It's only an enlightened being that would be able to be polite, kind, friendly, respectful in all situations, every single relationship. But you would like to have relationships where people aren't attached to you. If people are attached to you or having significant craving, desire, attachment, that means they're going to have a lot of anger and hostility in their mind, and that might be vented at you. And if they're attached to you, They might be having animosity or resentment towards you for any number of reasons. So you would like to maintain relationships where people can be polite, kind, friendly, and respectful, because in these situations, you're going to notice that they have less craving, desire, attachment to you. Therefore, you'll find that you'll have more of a foundation to be able to then create a healthy relationship together. Another thing you can look at when you're having relationships and looking to cultivate wholesome relationships is the 5 precepts. You understand the 5 precepts, perhaps, if you're studying at this point with me, that you understand about killing and stealing, sexual misconduct, lying, intoxicants. And this is wisdom of the natural law of Gotama, of cause and effect, or action and result. And if you're practicing those teachings, you would like to have friends who are also practicing the 5 precepts. They might not know them as the 5 precepts. They might not have studied Buddhist teachings. But these 5 precepts, because they're the natural laws of existence, namely the natural law of Gotama, they show up in many different teachings, whether it's Christianity or Muslim teachings or Hindu teachings or other traditions. Even grandma and grandpa are teaching things like this as an individual's growing up. So if they have the wisdom on board that they're practicing eliminating killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, lying, and intoxicants, and you're associating with these people, this is very helpful because they're making wise decisions about their own life. And now when you choose to make a decision to be their friend, then you'll know that they're making wise decisions in this area. So even though other people may not know the 5 precepts, you can use the wisdom of the 5 precepts, which is the wisdom of the natural law of Gotama, to determine whether it would be wise or unwise to associate with this particular individual in a non-judgmental way. You're using discernment. You're not looking down on them if they're choosing to kill or steal or have sexual misconduct or lie or intoxicants, but you're just realizing that it would be wise for you to make decisions to associate with people who are into wholesome things. As we talk about loving kindness and compassion at different times in the teachings that I share, loving kindness is having active goodwill, a genuine interest in seeing all beings be well, and compassion is to have concern for the misfortune of others. In order for you to practice loving kindness and compassion for other beings, you need to first have loving kindness and compassion for yourself, this being who you are. So if you choose to have friends who are in unwholesome things, this isn't having loving kindness and compassion for yourself, because by putting yourself in those situations, you're going to be impacted by people who are making unwise decisions because of your choice to associate with them. So understanding that only an enlightened being is going to be able to be polite, kind, friendly, and respectful permanently with all the relationships around them. And only someone who's in that first stage of enlightenment is going to be able to practice the 5 precepts to perfection. If you're looking through this lens and trying to find friends who are generally practicing in this way, as you're developing and as you're evolving, you're going to know that some of your friends are going to be having some challenges in these areas if they're not in the first stage of enlightenment or they're not actually enlightened. So you're going to most likely have friends that aren't in one of those stages. So you can get the wisdom of understanding how to cultivate relationships in such a way that even though they're maybe making some unwise decisions in their life, you can create a relationship in such a way that their unwise decisions aren't affecting you. So if somebody's lying to you, or they're stealing to you, or from you, or they're having sexual misconduct with you, or they're having substances that cause heedlessness and they're doing that around you, perhaps that's where you would maybe draw the line and decide, okay, I need to move on from this relationship. But maybe if they're doing this with other people, maybe you need to kind of look at that, because it's only a matter of time before they do those things with you. So you can cultivate relationships and kind of look at these types of things and decide whether it would be wise or unwise without actually judging them of whether or not they should or shouldn't be your friend, but instead just using discernment based on the wisdom that you have. Then the third thing that the Buddha is talking about here with his brother-in-law or his cousin that is leading him to hell is that he's learned the teachings to a certain degree, but he stopped. He got complacent. He essentially developed his mind to a certain degree, but he's no longer developing it any further. That's where the Buddha is saying, and there being some further to be done, meaning he hasn't yet gotten to enlightenment. He nevertheless stopped halfway with a low degree of distinctive attainment, meaning that he didn't actually get to the first, second, third, or fourth stage of enlightenment. He's maybe just practicing a little bit of the teachings here or there, that he's not continuing to develop his mind, and he became complacent and no longer is really looking to develop his mind and develop his wisdom to be able to get closer and closer to enlightenment. So these are the three things that are leading this individual to be reborn in hell. And you can learn from this, and then you can work to eradicate this from your practice. And if you're working to eliminate the 10 fetters and all the other teachings that I share related to the Eightfold Path, then you're already working to eliminate these things. But this is what you can understand that is leading this individual to being reborn in hell. So any questions that you guys have on this, you can put it into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or you can raise your hand in Zoom and ask any questions that you like. All right, I'm not seeing any questions here, so I'm going to move on to the next chapter. I'll just remind you guys, if you'd like to read it anytime, just let me know by raising your hand in Zoom, and I'll be able to call on you. So here, chapter 22 is titled Simile for the Suffering in Hell. Monks, there are these three characteristics of an unwise person, signs of an unwise person, attributes of an unwise person. What three? Here, an unwise person is one who thinks unwholesome thoughts, speaks unwholesome words, and does unwholesome actions. If an unwise person were not so, how would the wise know him thus? This person is an unwise person, an untrue man. Because of an unwise person, but because an unwise person is one who thinks unwholesome thoughts, speaks unwholesome words, and does unwholesome actions, the wise know him thus. This person is unwise, an untrue man. An unwise person feels pain and grief here and now in three ways. If an unwise person is seated in an assembly or along a street or in a square and people there are discussing certain pertinent and relevant matters, then if the unwise person is one who kills living beings, takes what is not given, misconducts himself in sensual pleasures, speaks falsehoods, and indulges in liquor, wine, intoxicants, substances that cause heedlessness, which are the basis of heedlessness. He thinks these people are discussing certain pertinent and relevant matters. These things are found in me, and I am seen engaging in those things. This is the first kind of pain and grief that an unwise person feels here and now. Again, when a robber, culprit is caught, an unwise person sees kings having many kinds of torture inflicted on him, having him flogged with whips, beaten with canes, beaten with clubs, having his hands cut off, his feet cut off, his hands and feet cut off, his ears cut off, his nose cut off, his ears and nose cut off, having him subjected to the porridge pot, to the polished shell shave, to the Rahu's mouth, to the fiery wrath, to the flaming hand, to the blades of grass, to the bark dress, to the antelope, to the meat hooks, to the coins, to the lye pickling, to the poverting pin, to the rolled up pallius, and having him splashed with boiled oil, and having him thrown to be devoured by dogs, and having him impaled alive on stakes, and having his head cut off with a sword. Then the unwise person thinks thus, because of such evil, unwholesome actions as those, when a robber culprit is caught, kings have many kinds of tortures inflicted on him. They have him flogged with whips, and have his head cut off with a sword. Those things are found in me, and I am seen engaging in those things. This is the second kind of pain and grief that an unwise person feels here and now. Again, an unwise person is on his chair or on his bed or resting on the ground. Then the evil, unwholesome actions that he did in the past, his bodily, verbal, and mental misconduct, cover him, overspread him, and envelop him. Just as the shadow of a great mountain peak in the evening covers, overspreads, and envelops the earth, so too, when an unwise person is on his chair or on his bed or resting on the ground, then the evil, unwholesome actions that he did in the past, his bodily, verbal, and mental misconduct, cover him, overspread him, and envelop him. Then the unwise person thinks, I have not done what is good. I have not done what is wholesome. I have not made myself a shelter from anguish. I have done what is evil, unwholesome. I have done what is cruel. I have done what is wicked. When I pass away, I shall go to the distinction of those who I shall go to the destination of those who have not done what is good, who have done what is wicked. He sorrows, grieves, and has displeasure. He cries, beating his breast, and becomes distraught. This is the third kind of pain and grief that an unwise person feels here and now. Okay, I'm going to talk here and then come back and start reading some more. Here, what the Buddha is talking about is the ways that you experience essentially misery and grief and pain and displeasure and despair now in this life based on the unwise things that you might choose to do in this life. He's talking about if you choose to have unwholesome thoughts, unwholesome words, and unwholesome actions. This is connected to right intention, right speech, and right action of the Eightfold Path. Because in the Eightfold Path, he's teaching you right intention, right speech, and right action. Here, this is just the opposite, that if you did just the opposite of those things, that would be the unwholesome thoughts, or the unwholesome words, or the unwholesome actions. And he's saying, okay, if you do these unwise things, then individuals who have wisdom will know that you've done these unwise things. That's what he's got here, that as you're doing these unwise things, individuals are going to know that, hey, you're an unwise person and you're doing things that are unwholesome. And then you're going to experience this pain and grief here and now in three ways. The first one that he's talking about here is he's talking about if you go around other beings who are in a community or in an assembly or in a group, and they're talking about the 5 precepts like killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, speaking falsehoods, and indulging in wine, liquor, and intoxicants, then you're going to know, oh my goodness, they're talking about those unwise and unwholesome things, and I actually do those things. And then because they're talking about those things and you find those things in you, you know that, okay, they see you engaging in those things and they know that you're unwise. They know that you're unwholesome. They know that you're doing all these things. So that's one of the first ways that you're going to experience pain and grief, as these people are identifying that you're into unwholesome things. And you're going to experience that grief or that guilt or shame or fear in the mind. Then the second thing is he says, okay, when there's a certain robber who's stolen things in the kingdom and they go and see the king's going to inflict a certain punishment on them. Now, back during the lifetime of the Buddha, when an individual would commit a crime in the kingdom, they would take you to the king and then share the evidence, and then the king would inflict these punishments. Nowadays, we go to a court, right? So an individual would go to a court. There's an individual judge who's listening to what we have done, and then they're going to have some kind of punishment. And most likely their punishments aren't going to be these things, but you can see the pretty significant things that existed during the lifetime of the Buddha. Having your feet cut off, your hands and your feet cut off, your ears, your nose and your ears, so forth and so on. There's this whole list of punishments that can be inflicted by the king. Well, nowadays it's going to prison, it's going to jail, all these different things that can happen to you as a result of doing unwise things. And the Buddha is saying, okay, when you see that this person has been sentenced to these punishments based on having done these unwise things, that you might realize like, oh my goodness, I do those same unwise things that those people are doing that have got caught and they're going to jail. So say that you lie on your tax form and you see somebody in the news who has lied on a tax form. You might get really worried because you do those same things, and now you might worry about going to jail yourself. Or say that you see somebody stealing and they get caught and they're in the news and they go to prison. And now you know that you're stealing too. And now you see that and you're going to worry about that. And that's what the Buddha is saying, is that when you see things happen to other people that are punishments, that they're experiencing punishment for the same exact things that you're doing, you're going to worry about that, and you're going to experience pain and grief now from having seen that. That's the second pain and grief that an unwise person feels here and now. And then the third one that the Buddha is talking about is that as you're doing unwholesome things, and you know that you're doing unwholesome things, as you're laying down, as you're just thinking about things, maybe you're on your bed or you're on the ground, you're just thinking about your life and the various things that you're doing, you're going to know that you have done unwise things, that you are doing these cruel things, these wicked things. And as you're understanding that, and you're being able to see that you're doing unwise and unwholesome things, you're going to then realize, when I pass away, I shall go to the destination of those who have not done what is good. Here the Buddha is talking about hell, that if you know that you're doing unwise things, this can envelop you here and now, realizing like, oh my goodness, I've done all these unwise things. Essentially, you're sitting with your own thoughts, whether you're lying down or you're in a chair somewhere sitting, you can have your thoughts overwhelm you and envelop you of all these unwholesome and cruel things that you're doing. And now this is going to produce sorrow right now in this life. You're going to have displeasure and grief because you're realizing like, oh my goodness, I'm doing all these unwholesome things. When I die, I'm going to go to this really horrible place. And here we're talking about hell. So the Buddha is saying this is going to cause you displeasure here and now in this life. Not only here and now, but then if you're reborn into the realm of hell, you're going to experience the pain there as well. So now the Buddha is saying that's the third kind of pain and grief that you will experience. So now the Buddha goes on. An unwise person who has given himself over to misconduct of body, speech, and mind, on the dissolution of the body after death, reappears in a state without basic necessities, in an unhappy destination, even in hell. So all those things, the Buddha is saying, okay, you do unwholesome things, this is where it's going to lead. Not only those three things that we just talked about, but rebirth in hell as well. Were it rightly speaking to be said of anything that is utterly unwished for, utterly undesired, utterly disagreeable, it is of hell that, rightly speaking, this should be said, so much so that it is hard to find a simile for the suffering in hell. But, venerable sir, can a simile be given? It can, monk, the perfectly enlightened one said. So now the Buddha is going to give a simile of the pain that is experienced in hell, because he's already talked to you about the pain and the grief and the misery that you experience in this life based on doing unwholesome things. Now he's going to explain to you a simile of what the pain is like in hell. And the reason why the Buddha knows this is that he actually experienced being reborn in these various realms. So at one time before he was a Buddha, he was in the realm of hell, and that's how he understands the experience that one would have in hell. That's why he can describe it, because he has these memories of times when he was in these other realms, and that's why he can explain each individual realm. Monks, suppose men caught a robber culprit, presented him to the king, saying, Sir, here is a robber culprit. Order what punishment you will for him. Then the king said, Go and strike this man in the morning with 100 spears. And they struck him in the morning with 100 spears. Then at noon the king asked, How is that man? Sir, he is still alive. Then the king said, Go and strike that man at noon with 100 spears. And they struck him at noon with 100 spears. Then in the evening the king asked, How is that man? Sir, he is still alive. Then the king said, Go and strike that man in the evening with 100 spears. And they struck him in the evening with 100 spears. What do you think, monks? Would that man experience pain and grief because of being struck with the 300 spears? Venerable sir, that man would experience pain and grief because of being struck with even one spear, let alone 300. Then, taking a small stone the size of his hand, the perfectly enlightened one addressed the monks thus, What do you think, monks? What is greater, this small stone that I have taken, the size of my hand, or Himalaya, the king of mountains? Venerable sir, the small stone that the perfectly enlightened one has taken, the size of his hand, is insignificant besides Himalaya, the king of mountains. It is not even a fraction. There is no comparison. So too, monks, the pain and grief that the man would experience because of being struck with 300 spears does not count beside the suffering of hell. It is not even a fraction. There is no comparison. So what the Buddha is saying here is the pain and misery that you would experience by getting struck with 300 spears is not even a fraction of the pain and misery you'll experience in this hell realm. And he's helping you to understand that so that you can understand what's happening and what's going on there. He's not trying to guilt, shame, or fear you into learning his teachings, because remember, you're eliminating guilt, shame, and fear on the path to enlightenment. He's just helping you to understand what goes on there, because you can actually encounter beings who are in the hell realm and they're in such pain and agony, and you can experience that through the communication from these beings. Or you might experience residual memories of you having been in hell in the past. And now as you experience that, you'll understand where that's coming from. What the Buddha goes on to do here is he goes on to explain each one of these punishments, which I'm not going to read to you. You can see them in the book because it's quite graphic and you can understand it, but it's not something that you need to memorize or retain in order to be able to get to enlightenment. But it's interesting information. You can see here like a simple one, this number 1, the porridge pot. It is smashing the skull open, peeling off the scalp, putting a blazing iron inside with tongs in order to burst the brain out like over boiling pot. So these are some of the things that the Buddha is describing is going on in the hell realm. So you can read these on your own if you like and ask any questions, but you don't have to memorize them. Potentially, if you're learning and practicing these teachings, you'll get to the first stage of enlightenment and you'll never ever be reborn back into the lower realms ever again if you happen to have been in any of those realms in the past. So let me know if you have any questions on this chapter. You can put it into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or you can raise your hand in Zoom and ask any questions that you like. Mayu Lee is asking a question here. She says, the 15 punishments that the Buddha mentioned in hell, are all hell beings going through all these 15 punishments every day for the rest of their long hell life? I'm not 100% sure if they're experiencing all 15 every single day or not, but I know that those are the 15 punishments that can be experienced in hell. Okay, we have some questions here from Tonka in YouTube. She's saying, listening or reading this chapter brings a lot of discomfort. Any advice? A description of those punishments is what I asked about. Yeah, so what you should do is cut off and let go of any discomfort that is arising. And then after you've done that, wait a few days, read the chapter again. If any discomfort arises, cut it off and let it go. And then keep doing that until this discomfort is eliminated. There's certain cravings, desires, attachments that are in the mind that are producing that discomfort to arise. And the way to eliminate it is to cut it off and let it go in the moment using right mindfulness and right effort from the Eightfold Path. And then after the mind's had a few days, then read it again. And keep doing that until you get to the point where you can read it and there's no discomfort whatsoever. So then your mind has eliminated the craving and you're no longer experiencing discontentedness related to that particular content. So that's what you would like to do in order to eliminate that. Kushi has a question here in Zoom. If you'd like to go ahead, ma'am.
Yeah, so I had to ask that how long is the life span of hell beings? Because some of these things mentioned here are sounding so painful that if a human being has to go through it, he or she would be dead in like a few days. So how long does a hell being have to suffer through all this?
You're going to see that in a moment. The Buddha talks about the lifespan of a being in hell. It's an extensive amount of time. You can see even here in the previous discourse where he's talking about his brother or his brother-in-law is going to be reborn there for an eon. When the Buddha talks about an eon in other parts of his teachings, he talks about it as an immeasurable amount of time that you can't even put a number on it. During the lifetime of the Buddha, the highest number they really had was like 100,000. They didn't even have the word or the number million or billion or trillion back then. That was invented after the life of the Buddha. So when they talked about an eon, it was like an immeasurable amount of time. They didn't even have a number to represent how long an eon is. So we don't have an exact number of how long an eon is, but we know it's more than 100,000 because that was about the highest number that they had during that time frame. So it could be a million, it could be a billion years, it could be a trillion years. It's a really long period of time. So you're going to see that beings in the hell realm, as well as beings in the heavenly realm, they can have an extended a period of time. I've seen as minimum as about 500 years is what people experience rebirth in hell or the heavenly realm. But sometimes you can see the Buddha talking about an eon being reborn in a particular realm, either in hell or even the heavenly realm, even multiple eons. So multiple amounts of immeasurable amount of time. And this is why these beings are formless, because if you have physical form like we do in the animal realm and the human realm, we tend to have a very short time frame in our life comparative to these formless realms, because we have this conditioned experience of the physical structures of the body. We have physical form in the animal realm and the human realm. So we arise, change, and fade away in a relatively short period of time versus beings in those formless realms. Those beings in the formless realms, they can exist for a significant period of time because they're formless. Okay, I'm not seeing any other questions anywhere. Great questions, guys. All right, so we'll move on to the next chapter, which is chapter 23. Oh, Kushi. Oh, yes, Kushi would like to read. Yeah, go ahead, ma'am.
Yeah, I can read it. Many kinds of tortures inflicted on those who do evil, unwholesome actions. Monks, suppose there were two houses with doors, and a man with good sight standing there between them saw people going in and coming out and passing to and from. So too, with the divine eye, third eye, which is purified and surpasses the human, I see beings passing away and reappearing, unwholesome and wholesome, fair and ugly, fortunate and unfortunate. I understand how beings pass on according to their actions thus. These worthy beings who were well conducted in body, speech, and mind, not abusive of noble ones, right in their views, giving effect to right views in their actions on the dissolution of the body after death, have reappeared among human beings. But these worthy beings who were ill conducted in body, speech, and mind, abusive of noble ones, wrong in their views, giving effect to wrong views in their actions on the dissolution of the body after death, have reappeared in the realm of afflicted spirits. Or these worthy beings who were ill conducted in body, speech, and mind, abusive of noble ones, wrong in their views, giving effect to wrong views in their actions on the dissolution of the body after death, have reappeared in the animal world. Or these worthy beings who were ill conducted in body, speech, and mind, abusive of noble ones, wrong in their views, giving effect to wrong views in their actions on the dissolution of the body after death, have reappeared in a state without basic necessities in an unhappy destination, in perdition, even in hell. Now the wardens of hell seize such a being by the arms and present him to King Yama, saying, Sir, this man has ill-treated his mother, ill-treated his father, ill-treated his ascetics, ill-treated Brahmins. He has had no respect for the elders of his clan. Let the king order his punishment. Then King Yama presses and questions and cross-questions him about the first divine messenger. Good man, did you not see the first divine messenger to appear in the world? He says, I did not, venerable sir. The king Yama then asks, Good man, have you never seen in the world a young tender infant lying prone, fouled in his own excrement and urine? He says, I have, venerable sir. The king Yama says, good man, did it never occur to you, an intelligent and mature man? I am too subject to birth. I am not exempt from birth. Surely I had better do good by body, speech, and mind. He says, I was unable, venerable sir, I was complacent. Then King Yama says, good man, through complacency you have failed to do good by body, speech, and mind. Certainly they will deal with you according to your complacency. But this evil, unwholesome action of yours was not done by your mother or your father, or by your brother or by your sister, or by your friends and companions, or by your kinsmen and relative, or by ascetics and Brahmins, or by gods. This evil, unwholesome action was done by you yourself, and you yourself will experience its result. Then, after pressing and questioning and cross questioning him about the first divine messenger, King Yama presses and questions and cross questions him about the second divine messenger. Good man, did you not see the second divine messenger to appear in the world? He says, I did not, venerable sir. Then King Yama says, good man, have you never seen in the world a man or a woman at 80, 90, or 100 years, aged as crooked as a roof bracket, doubled up, supported by walking stick, unsteady, weak, youth gone, teeth broken, gray haired, sandy haired, palled, wrinkled, with limbs all blotchy? He says, I have, venerable sir. Then the king Yama says, good man, did it never occur to you, an intelligent and mature man, I too am subject to aging. I am not exempt from aging. Surely I had better do good by body, speech, and mind. He says, I was unable, venerable sir. I was complacent. Then King Yama says, good man, through complacency you have failed to do good by body, speech, and mind. Certainly they will deal with you according to your complacency. But this evil, unwholesome action of yours was not done by your mother or by your father or by your brother or your sister or by your friends or companions or by your kinsmen and relatives or by the ascetics and Brahmins or by gods. This evil, unwholesome action was done by you yourself, and you yourself will experience its result. Then, after pressing and questioning and cross questioning him about the second divine messenger, King Yama presses and questions and cross questions him about the third divine messenger. Good man, did you not see the third divine messenger to appear in the world? He says, I did not, venerable sir. Then the king Yama says, good man, have you never seen in the world a man or a woman afflicted, suffering, or gravely ill, lying fouled in his own excrement and urine, lifted up by some and set down by others? He says, I have, venerable sir. Then King Yama says, good man, did it never occur to you, an intelligent, mature man? I too am subject to sickness. I am not exempt from sickness. Surely I had better do good by body, speech, and mind. He says, I was unable, venerable sir. I was complacent. Then King Yama says, good man, through complacency you have failed to do good by body, speech, and mind. Certainly they will deal with you according to your complacency. But this evil, unwholesome action of yours was not done by your mother or your father, or by your brother or your sister, or by your friends and companions, or by your kinsmen and relatives, or by ascetics and Brahmins, or by gods. This evil, unwholesome action was done by you yourself, and you yourself will experience its result. Then, after pressing and questioning and cross questioning him about third divine messenger, King Yama presses and questions and cross-questions him about the fourth divine messenger. Good man, did you not see the fourth divine messenger to appear in the world? He says, I did not, venerable sir. Then King Yama says, Good man, have you never seen in the world when a robber culprit is caught, kings having many kinds of torture inflicted on him, having him flogged with whips, beaten with canes, beaten with clubs, having his hands cut off, his feet cut off, his hands and feet cut off, his ears cut off, his nose cut off, his ears and nose cut off, having him subjected to the porridge pot and polished shells shaved, to the Rahu's mouth, to the fiery breath, to the flaming hand, to the blades of grass, to the bark dress, to the antelope, to the meat hooks, to the coin, to the lye pickling, to the pivoting bean, to the rolled up pallias, and having him splashed with boiling oil, and having him thrown to be devoured by dogs, and having him impaled alive on stakes, and having his head cut off with a sword. He says, I have, venerable sir. Then King Yama says, Good man, did it never occur to you, an intelligent, mature man, those who do evil, unwholesome actions have such tortures of various kinds inflicted on them here and now. So what in the hereafter? Surely I had better do good by body, speech, and mind. He says, I was unable, venerable sir. I was complacent. Then King Yama says, Good man, through complacency you have failed to do good by body, speech, and mind. Certainly they will deal with you according to your complacency. But this evil, unwholesome action of yours was not done by your mother or your father, or by your brother or your sister, or by your friends and companions, or by your kinsmen and relatives, or by ascetics and Brahmins, or by gods. This evil, unwholesome action was done by you yourself, and you yourself will experience its result. Then, after pressing and questioning and cross-questioning him about the fourth divine messenger, King Yama presses and questions him and cross-questions him about the fifth divine messenger. Good man, did you not see the fifth divine messenger to appear in the world? He says, I did not, venerable sir. Then King Yama says, Good man, have you never seen in the world a man or a woman 1 day dead, 2 days dead, 3 days dead, bloated, livid, and oozing with matter? He says, I have, venerable sir. Then King Yama says, Good man, did it never occur to you, an intelligent and mature man, I am too subject to death, I am not exempt from death. Surely I had better do good by body, speech, and mind. He says, I was unable, venerable sir. I was complacent. Then King Yama says, Good man, through your complacency you have failed to do good by body, speech, and mind. Certainly they will deal with you according to your complacency. But this evil, unwholesome action of yours was not done by your mother or your father, or by your brother or your sister, or by your friends and companions, or by your kinsmen and relatives, or by ascetics and Brahmins, or by gods. This evil, unwholesome action was done by you yourself, and you yourself will experience its result. Then, after pressing and questioning and cross-questioning him about the fifth divine messenger, King Yama is silent. Now the wardens of hell torture him with the fivefold transfixing. Then drive a red-hot iron stake through one hand. They drive a red iron stake through the another hand. They drive a red-hot iron stake through one foot. They drive a red-hot iron stake through the other foot. They drive a red-hot iron stake in the middle through his breast. There he feels painful, agonizing, piercing feelings. Yet he does not die, so long as that evil, unwholesome action has not exhausted its result. Next, the wardens of hell throw him down and bear him with axes. There he feels painful, agonizing, piercing feelings. yet he does not die so long as that the evil, unwholesome action has exhausted its result. Next, the wardens of hell set him with his feet up, his head down, and bear him with adzes. There he feels painful, agonizing, piercing feelings, yet he does not die so long that the evil, unwholesome action has not exhausted its result. Next, the warden of hell harness him to a chariot and drive him back and forth across ground that is burning, blazing, and glowing. There he feels painful, agonizing, and piercing feelings, yet he does not die so long as that evil, unwholesome state, unwholesome action has not exhausted its results. Next, the wardens of hell make him climb up and down a great mount of coals that are burning, blazing, and glowing. There he feels painful, agonizing, piercing feelings. Yet he does not die so long as the evil, unwholesome action has not exhausted its result. Next, the wardens of hell take him feet up and head down and plunge him into red hot metal cauldron that is burning, blazing, and glowing. He is cooked there in a swirl of froth, and as he is being cooked, there in the swirl of froth, he is swept now up, now down, and now across. There he feels painful, agonizing, piercing feelings, yet he does not die so long as that evil, unwholesome action has not exhausted its result. Next, the wardens of hell throw him into the great hell. Now, as to the great hell, monks, it has 4 corners and is built with 4 doors, one set on each side, walled up with iron all around, and shut in with an iron roof. Its floor as well is made of iron, and heated till it glows with fire. The range is a full 100 leagues, which it covers all pervasively. Now the flames that surge out of the great hell's eastern wall dash against its western wall. The flames that surge out of western wall dash against its eastern wall. The flames that surge out of its northern wall dash against its southern wall. The flames that surge out from its southern wall dash against its northern wall. The flames that dash out from the bottom dash against the top. And the flames that surge out from the top dash against the bottom. There he feels painful, agonizing, piercing feelings. Yet he does not die so long as that evil, unwholesome action does not get exhausted its result. Sometime or other, monks, at the end of a long period, there comes an occasion when the great hell eastern door is opened. He runs towards it, treading quickly. As he does so, his outer skin burns, his inner skin burns, his flesh burns, his sinews burns, his bones turn to smoke, and it is in the same when his foot is uplifted. When at long last he reaches the door, then it is shut. There he feels painful, agonizing, piercing feelings. Yet he does not die so long as that evil, unwholesome action has not exhausted its result. Sometime or other, at the end of a long period, there comes an occasion when the great hell's western door is open, when its northern door is open, when its southern door is open. He runs towards it, treading quickly. When at long last he reaches the door, then it is shut. There he feels painful, agonizing, piercing feelings. Yet he does not die so long as that evil, unwholesome action has not exhausted its results. Sometime or other, monks, at the end of a long period, there comes an occasion when the great hell's eastern door is opened. He runs towards it, treading quickly. He does so. As he does so, his outer skin burns, his inner skin burns, his flesh burns, his sinews burns, his bones turn to smoke, and it is in the same when his foot is uplifted. He comes out by the door. Immediately next to the great hell is a vast hell of excrement. He falls into that. In that hell of excrement, needle-mouthed creatures bore through his outer skin and bore through his inner skin and bore through his flesh and bore through his sinews and bore through his bones and devoured his marrow. There he feels painful, agonizing, and piercing feelings. Yet he does not die so long as that evil, unwholesome action has not exhausted its result. Immediately next to the hell of excrement is the vast hell of hot embers. He falls into that. There he feels painful, agonizing, and piercing feelings, yet he does not die so long as that evil, unwholesome action has not exhausted its results. Immediately next to the hell of hot embers is the vast wood of Simbali trees, a league high, bristling with thorns, 16 finger breadths long, burning, blazing, and glowing. They make him climb up and down those trees. There he feels painful, agonizing, piercing feelings. Yet he does not die so long as that evil, unwholesome action has not exhausted its result. Immediately next to that wood of Sambali tree is a vast wood of sword leaf trees. He goes into that. The leaves stirred by the wind cut his hands and cut his feet and cut his hands and feet. They cut his ears, they cut his nose and his ears and nose. There he feels painful, agonizing, piercing feelings, yet he does not die so long as that evil, unwholesome action has not exhausted its result. Immediately next to the wood of sword leaf trees is a great river of caustic water. He falls into that. There he is swept along the stream and against the stream, and both along and against the stream. There he feels painful, agonizing, piercing feelings. Yet he does not die so long as that evil, unwholesome action has not exhausted result. Next, the warden of hell pull him out with a hook and setting him on the ground, they ask him.
Let me check something, Kushi. I didn't realize this chapter was so long. I can finish the reading if you need help.
It's okay. It's going to end in a bit, I guess.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't realize this one was so long. It's only 1 page and a little bit left.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for reading.
Yeah. Good man, what do you want? He says. I am hungry, venerable sir. Then the wardens of hell prise open his mouth with red-hot iron tongs, burning, blazing, and glowing, and they throw into his mouth a red-hot metal ball, burning, blazing, and glowing. It burns his lips, it burns his mouth, it burns his throat, it burns his stomach, and it passes out below, carrying with it his intestines and mesentery. There he feels painful, agonizing, piercing feelings, yet he does not die so long as that evil, unwholesome action has not exhausted its result. Next, the wardens of hell ask him, Good man, what do you want? He says, I am thirsty, venerable sir. Then the wardens of hell prise up his mouth with red-hot iron tongs, burning, blazing, and glowing, and they pour into his mouth molten copper, burning, blazing, and glowing. It burns his lips, it burns his mouth, it burns his throat, it burns his stomach, and it passes out below, carrying with it his intestine and mesentery. There he feels painful, agonizing, piercing feelings. Yet he does not die so long as that evil, unwholesome action has not exhausted its result. Then the wardens of hell throw him back again into the great hell. It has happened that King Yama thought, those in the world who do evil, unwholesome actions indeed have all this many kinds of tortures inflicted on them. Oh, that I might attain the human state, that the Tathagata accomplished and fully enlightened might appear in the world, that I might wait on that fortunate one, that the perfectly enlightened one might teach me the teachings, and that I might come to understand that the fortunate one's teachings. Monks, I tell you, this is not as something I heard from another ascetic or Brahmin. I tell you this as something that I have actually known, seen, and discovered by myself. That is what the perfectly enlightened one said. When the fortunate one had said that, the teacher further said, though warned by the divine messengers, full many are the complacent, and the people may sorrow long indeed, once gone down to the lower world. But when by the divine messengers good people here in this life are warned, they do not dwell in complacency, but practice well the noble teachings. Clinging, they look upon with fear, for it produces birth and death. And by not clinging, they are freed in the destruction of birth and death. They reside in joy, for they are safe and reach nibbana, enlightenment here and now. They are beyond all fear and hate. They have escaped all discontentedness.
All right. Thank you so much, Kushi. Very long chapter. Thank you for reading all of that. It takes a lot of concentration to be able to do that. Okay. So the way that you use a chapter like this to be able to help you in your practice is you look at the things that the Buddha is describing that one is experiencing that is leading to this pain and agonizing feelings, as well as this potential rebirth into the lower realms. So the Buddha talks in here a lot of different things that you can pull out, where he talks about treating your parents, your mother and your father, being ill-treated, or ascetics, Brahmins, elders of your clan. Those are things that you would like to eliminate, right? And then he goes on and he talks about all these different things that you can understand, where he talks about complacency, that because this individual was complacent, he didn't develop his practice and he didn't improve the things that he needed to improve with his mind. And therefore it led him to being unwise about the teachings that would lead to improvement in his life. So this person kept doing these unwise things. And as they kept doing these unwise things, eventually there's this rebirth in hell, and this person has to extinguish all the unwholesome results of their decisions. That you can extinguish your karma in this life, and that's what it means to get to enlightenment, is that you're training your mind, you're using the Eightfold Path to extinguish any unwholesome results that you have created due to your unwise decisions in the past. You're extinguishing all that unwholesome old karma by creating only new wholesome karma. Because your lifespan in hell is going to be as long as it needs to be in order to extinguish all your unwholesome karma to a point that you can then be reborn into at least an animal realm or afflicted spirits or some other realm. So you can't extinguish all your unwholesome karma in these lower realms, but it's a place that you go in order to extinguish a significant amount of unwholesome karma. So if somebody's doing a lot of unwholesome things in this life, in the human realm, an individual can be reborn in those lower realms to burn off some of that unwholesome karma. So then ultimately what the Buddha finally gets to, and you can read through this to pick out those wholesome qualities to cultivate and the unwholesome qualities to eliminate. Eventually what he gets to, after describing all these hells, is that it's the teachings of a perfectly enlightened one that's going to be able to help you to develop the mind and get to the point where you're not doing any of these unwholesome things, that you can not dwell in complacency, but instead practice the noble teachings. And then as you do, your mind is no longer craving and clinging, so you're no longer having this fear. Your mind is protected. You have this joy, and the mind escapes all discontentedness, residing in enlightenment. So let me know what questions you guys have on this chapter. You can put that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or you can raise your hand in Zoom and ask any questions that you like. Looks like Mayuli has a question here. Going back to previous chapter, I'm assuming you can't die from hell from all those punishments until all unwholesome karma have been extinguished. But how? When hell beings are created, new karma in hell's realms due to all the suffering that they are going through. I guess what I'm trying to say is I can't see how hell beings can ever get out of hell realms once there, since their mind will not be purified because of the pain they are going through. Okay, so this first part of I'm assuming you can't die from hell from all those punishments until all unwholesome karma have been extinguished. But how? So you're going to die in hell when a certain amount of unwholesome karma has been extinguished, but not all your unwholesome karma, because by the time all your unwholesome karma is extinguished, the mind is actually enlightened, and you can't actually extinguish all of it from hell, animal, or afflicted spirits. In the human realm and the heavenly realms, there you can extinguish all your unwholesome karma by the time you get to those realms. But it's beings who have created a bunch of unwholesome karma that are going to these realms to burn off a certain amount of that unwholesome karma. When hell beings are creating new karma in hell due to all the suffering they are going through. So they're not creating unwholesome karma by going through the suffering. The suffering that they're experiencing is their unwholesome karma. The way that you create unwholesome karma is by making new decisions that are unwise. So when they're in the hell realm, you're essentially like a prisoner. You're not able to really create any more unwholesome karma from being there, because you're only experiencing this pain and agony due to all your cravings that you once had and you still have. Your mind is experiencing all this pain and misery. You don't experience any pleasant feelings, and you don't experience any feelings that are neither painful nor pleasant. It's only painful feelings that you're experiencing in the hell realm. So being there, it's almost like being chained to a wall, and you're just experiencing nothing but punishment, 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 punishment. You're not making any decisions. You're just experiencing lots of punishment. So they're not creating any new unwholesome karma from being there. But being in the hell realm, in the animal realm, yes, it's like a prison. The Buddha describes it that way, that it's very challenging to get out of those realms. But you will ultimately get out of those realms. Like the Buddha, he was once in the hell realm, he was once in the animal realm, afflicted spirit realm. That's how he knew about those realms. But ultimately, he ended up getting into some human existences, and he had multiple human existences before he actually was born into that last life where he got to enlightenment. So that should answer your questions there, Mayu Li, that it's the extinguishing of the craving that's happening in the hell realm. It's not producing any new decisions once you're there. Let's see if we have any questions here in YouTube. Let's see, we don't have any questions there, and there's no questions in Zoom either. So let's go on to the next chapter, which is chapter 24. This is a simile explaining to you the lifespan of the hell realm, like I mentioned. So here I'll read this one. This is about 2 pages or so. Simile of the lifespan in hell. Venerable Sir, Sariputta and Mangalana have evil, unwholesome desires and have come under the control of evil, unwholesome desires. Do not say so, Kokalata. Do not say so, Kokalata. Place confidence in Sariputta and Mangalana, Kolata. Sariputta and Mangalana are well behaved. Then, for a second time, and yet a third time, the monk Kolata repeated his words, and a second time, and a third time, the perfectly enlightened one advised him with the same words. Then the monk Kolata rose from his seat, paid homage, respect to the perfectly enlightened one, circled the perfectly enlightened one, keeping the right side towards him, and departed. Then, when the night had passed, the perfectly enlightened one addressed the monks. Monks, last night, when the night had advanced, Brahma Sahapata approached me and said to me, Venerable Sir, the monk Kokalata has died, and because of his resentment against Sariputta and Mangalana, after death he has been reborn in the red lotus hell. He then paid homage, respect to me, circled me, keeping the right side towards me, and disappeared right there. How long, Venerable Sir, is the lifespan in the red lotus hell? The lifespan in the red lotus hell is long, monk. It is not easy to count it and say it is so many years, or so many hundreds of years, or so many thousands of years, or so many hundreds of thousands of years. Then, is it possible, Venerable Sir, to give a simile? It is, monk. Suppose there was a Kausalan cartload of 20 measures of sesame seed. At the end of every 100 years, a man would remove one seed from it. In this manner, the Kosalana cartload of 20 measures of sesame seed might be depleted and eliminated more quickly than a life in a single Abba. I can't pronounce all these words. Sorry, guys. Abba, Buddha, Bada hell would go by. One life in the Nara Buddha hell is equivalent to 20 lives in this other hell. So he's going through and basically describing all these different hells, and that they're longer. And one life in the Red Lotus hell is equivalent to 20 lives in that other White Lotus hell. So this Red Lotus hell is like the place where the longest lifespan would exist. Now, because he harbored resentment against Sariputta and Mangalana, the monk Kokalada has been reborn in the Red Lotus hell. This is what the perfectly enlightened one said. Having said this, the fortunate one, the teacher, further said this: when a person has taken birth, an axe is born inside his mouth, with which the unwise person cuts himself by uttering wrongful speech. He who praises one deserving blame or blames one deserving praise casts with his mouth an unlucky throw by which he finds no peacefulness. Slight is the unlucky throw at dice that results in the loss of one's wealth, the loss of all, oneself included. Much worse is this unlucky throw of harboring hate against the holy ones. For 100,036 Narabodhas plus 5 Abadabas, the slanderer of noble ones goes to hell, having defamed them with evil, unwholesome speech in mind. So what the Buddha is describing here is that if you slander or gossip about someone who is in one of the stages of enlightenment or close to enlightenment, because Sariputta and Mangalana actually got to enlightenment during the Buddha's life, the Buddha is saying if you slander these individuals, that it's going to produce you being reborn into this very significant hell. So all these different hells that the Buddha is describing here, this is the categorization of all the different hells. As I mentioned in our previous classes, you don't need to know all these different hells. This is referred to as the cosmology that existed during the lifetime of the Buddha. You don't need to know all of those different hells in order to get to enlightenment, but just know that the Buddha is describing them in detail to be able to thoroughly help you understand them. Nowadays, we usually kind of refer to hell in a general sense. But if you were interested in knowing all the individual hells, this is what they were actually describing and talking about back then. But you wouldn't need to retain this type of information to be able to actually get to enlightenment. You've got it here in a book. Just understand the hell realm and that the lifespan is a significant period of time, and that there's lots of pain and torture and grief and misery and despair in that realm. They're only experiencing painful feelings, and you're disinterested in ever being reborn there ever again, or even for a first time. So let me know what questions you guys have here on this chapter. This is helping you to understand to, of course, have wholesome speech or right speech about everybody and anybody, especially individuals who are in any of the stages of enlightenment. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions here. So let's go to the next chapter. The next chapter is chapter 25. This one is titled "The Hell Named the Great Flagellation." So here, all of these chapters, I'm not actually going to go through and read all of these, because what you're getting is the Buddha describing each one of these hells, the different distinctions of these hells. You can actually read this if you like on your own time, because it's just describing all these hells. And as I mentioned, you're not going to need to understand all of this in order to get to enlightenment. So if you guys have any questions on any of these chapters, if you've read them before class and you have questions, you can ask those now. Or if you read them after class and you have questions, you can always ask those questions in Facebook, send me a private message, or schedule personal guidance. So this one is this particular hell, and he's describing this particular hell. And essentially what he's describing is not understanding the Four Noble Truths is essentially equivalent to being reborn in hell, because it's the Four Noble Truths that is going to have that breakthrough where you understand the problem in the unenlightened mind, the cause, the elimination, and the path forward. So he's saying that by not knowing these Four Noble Truths, it's like being reborn in hell itself, because you're going to keep experiencing discontentedness over and over and over again in this life. That's what he's talking about here. And then this one here, this is another hell that he's talking about. It's called the contact sixfold base. So here he's describing that one, and you guys might decide to read that after class, or you can read these chapters before class. Then here he's talking in chapter 27, the suffering of bondage. He's going through and describing all the different sufferings that you would experience in hell, in this particular hells. So you can read this one if you like. And let's see, this next one, we can read this one. This one I think is fairly short, and it's describing and helping you to understand that it's very rare for a being to be reborn from hell into the human realm or into the heavenly realm. They're not typically born directly into human and heavenly realm, but it can happen. It is possible, but it's very rare. So this one's titled, Few in Hell to be Reborn Among Human Beings or Heavenly Beings. This is chapter 28 in volume 11. What do you think, monks? Which is more, the little bit of soil in my finger nail or the great earth? Venerable sir, the great earth is more. The little bit of soil that the perfectly enlightened one has taken up in his fingernail is insignificant. Compared to the great earth, the little bit of soil that the perfectly enlightened one has taken up in his fingernail is not calculable, does not bear comparison, does not even amount even to a fraction. So too, monks, those beings are few who, when they pass away from hell, are reborn among human beings. But those beings are more numerous who, when they pass away from hell, are reborn in hell, in the animal realm, in the realm of afflicted spirits. For what reason? Because, monks, they have not seen the Four Noble Truths. What for? The noble truth of discontentedness, the noble truth of the cause of discontentedness, the noble truth of the elimination of discontentedness, the noble truth of the way leading to the elimination of discontentedness. Therefore, monks, an effort should be made to understand this is discontentedness. An effort should be made to understand this is the cause of discontentedness. An effort should be made to understand this is the elimination of discontentedness. An effort should be made to understand this is the way leading to the elimination of discontentedness. What do you think, monks? Which is more, the little bit of soil in my fingernail or the great earth? Venerable sir, the great earth is more. The little bit of soil that the perfectly enlightened one has taken up in his fingernail is insignificant. Compared to the great earth, the little bit of soil that the perfectly enlightened one has taken up in his fingernail is not calculable, does not bear comparison, does not amount even to a fraction. So too, monks, beings are few who, when pass away from hell, are reborn among heavenly beings. But those beings are more numerous who, when they pass away from hell, are reborn in hell, in the animal realm, in the realm of afflicted spirits. For what reason? Because they have not seen the Four Noble Truths. What for? The noble truth of discontentedness, the noble truth of the cause of discontentedness, the noble truth of the elimination of discontentedness, the noble truth of the way leading to the elimination of discontentedness. Therefore, monks, an effort should be made to understand this is discontentedness. An effort should be made to understand this is the cause of discontentedness. An effort should be made to understand this is the elimination of discontentedness. An effort should be made to understand this is the way leading to the elimination of discontentedness. So here, what you can understand is it's not possible for beings in the hell realm to actually learn the teachings of the Buddha and actually improve their mind to the point of enlightenment, that you can't learn the Four Noble Truths in hell. You're in such pain and agony, and there's no one there that is teaching the teachings of the Buddha. So the Buddha is explaining because of that those beings are going to more likely be reborn back into hell or into the animal realm or into the afflicted spirit realm. That's where beings typically move to from the hell realm. But in this human realm, beings also get reborn down into those lower realms. So you're not interested in going down there. It is possible for beings to be reborn out of those realms into human or heavenly realm, but it's not as likely as beings moving from the human realm down into the lower realms. So what questions do you guys have on this chapter? Okay, I'm not seeing any questions anywhere. So we'll move to chapter 29. Let me see what we've got here. Okay. This one's titled Other Darkness Greater Than the Blinding Darkness in the World of Dreadful Regions. Monks, there are world interstices vacant in dreadful regions of blinding darkness and gloom, where the light of the sun and moon, so powerful and mighty, does not reach. That darkness, Venerable Sir, is indeed great. That darkness is indeed very great. But is there, Venerable Sir, any other darkness greater and more frightful than that one? There is, monk. But what, Venerable Sir, is that darkness greater and more frightful than that one? Those ascetics and Brahmins, monk, who do not understand as it really is, this is discontentedness, who do not understand as it really is, this is the cause of discontentedness, who do not understand as it really is, this is the elimination of discontentedness, who do not understand as it really is, this is the way leading to the elimination of discontentedness. They excite in volitional formations, choices, decisions, that lead to birth, in volitional formations that lead to aging, in volitional formations that lead to death, in volitional formations that lead to sorrow, grief, pain, displeasure, and despair. Exciting in such volitional formations, they generate volitional formations that lead to birth, generate volitional formations that lead to aging, generate volitional formations that lead to death, generate volitional formations that lead to sorrow, grief, pain, displeasure, and despair. Having generated such volitional formations, they tumble into the darkness of birth, tumble into the darkness of aging, tumble into the darkness of death, tumble into the darkness of sorrow, grief, pain, displeasure, and despair. They are not freed from birth, aging, and grief, not freed from sorrow, grief, pain, displeasure, and despair, not freed from discontentedness, I say. But monk, those ascetics and Brahmins who understand as it really is, this is discontentedness, who understand as it really is, this is the cause of discontentedness, who understand as it really is, this is the elimination of discontentedness, who understand as it really is, this is the way leading to the elimination of discontentedness. They do not excite in volitional formations, choices, decisions that lead to birth, in volitional formations that lead to aging, in volitional formations that lead to death, in volitional formations that lead to sorrow, grief, pain, displeasure, and despair. Freed from discontentedness, I say. Therefore, monks, an effort should be made to understand this is discontentedness. An effort should be made to understand this is the cause of discontentedness. An effort should be made to understand this is the elimination of discontentedness. An effort should be made to understand this is the way leading to the elimination of discontentedness. So here the Buddha is saying that an individual who doesn't understand the Four Noble Truths, they're in this darkness. And this is the greatest darkness of any darkness. Because as long as you don't understand the Four Noble Truths, you can't have the breakthrough to understanding what's causing your discontentedness. So therefore you can't eliminate it. So understanding the Four Noble Truths is the very first step on the path to enlightenment. And an individual who doesn't understand the Four Noble Truths, they're going to keep making decisions that are leading to rebirth over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. And as long as there's rebirth, you're going to keep experiencing sorrow, grief, pain, displeasure, and despair. So having this darkness of not knowing and understanding the Four Noble Truths, an individual is like trapped in this continuous cycle. So that's what the Buddha is helping you to understand. And this is why when you first get on the path to enlightenment, it's so important to understand and practice the Four Noble Truths as the very first teaching and being sure that you deeply understand it before you even move on to understanding anything else related to the teachings of the Buddha. And that's why I start students with understanding and establishing right view as part of the Four Noble Truths when they first get started. So let me know what questions you guys have here. You can ask those by Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or you can raise your hand in Zoom and ask any questions that you like. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions. I think you guys understand this kind of thing pretty well by now if you've been studying with me for any amount of time. So this is chapter 30. We're going to start now exploring chapters related to the animal realm, where the Buddha is going to start explaining to you the animal realm and what is experienced there in the animal realm. So this is the only chapter today related to the animal realm, but then we've got several chapters after that you guys can study this week related to the animal realm. This one is titled To Reappear in the Company of Animals. Monks, there are animals that feed on grass. They eat by cropping fresh or dried grass with their teeth. And what animals feed on grass? Horses, cattle, donkeys, goats, deer, and any other such animals. An unwise person who formerly excited in flavors here and did evil, unwholesome actions here on the dissolution of the body after death reappears in the company of animals that feed on grass. There are animals that feed on dung. They smell dung from a distance and run to it, thinking, we can eat. We can eat, just as Brahman run to the smell of a sacrifice, thinking, we can eat here, we can eat here. So too these animals that feed on dung smell dung from a distance and run to it, thinking, we can eat here, we can eat here. And what animals feed on dung? Fowls, pigs, dogs, jackals, and any other such animals. An unwise person who formerly excited in flavors here and did evil, unwholesome actions here on the dissolution of the body after death reappears in the company of animals that feed on dung. There are animals that are born, age, and die in darkness. And what animals are born, age, and die in darkness? Moss, maggots, earthworms, and any other such animals. An unwise person who formerly excited in flavors here and did evil, unwholesome actions here on the dissolution of the body after death reappears in the company of animals that are born, age, and die in darkness. There are animals that are born, age, and die in water. And what animals are born, age, and die in water? Fish, turtles, crocodiles, and any other such animals. An unwise person who formerly excited in flavors here and did evil, unwholesome actions here on the dissolution of the body after death reappears in the company of animals that are born, age, and die in water. There are animals that are born, age, and die in filth. And what animals are born, age, and die in filth? Those animals that are born, age, and die in a rotten fish, or in a rotten corpse, or in a rotten porridge, or in a cesspit, or in a sewer. An unwise person who formerly excited in flavors here and did evil, unwholesome actions here on the dissolution of the body after death reappears in the company of animals that are born, age, and die in filth. Monks, I could tell you in many ways about the animal realm, so much so that it is hard to finish describing the discontentedness in the animal realm. So here the Buddha is explaining how one is reborn into the animal realm. It is through having central desire in the human realm that one is then exciting in those certain flavors that appear on the tongue. So that's why when you're eating food, you need to get to the point where you don't have any dislike or repulsion towards any foods whatsoever. If there are certain foods that you eat and you excite in them and you enjoy them so much, but then there are certain foods that you are repulsed by and you push them away, that's due to the mind's craving, desire, attachment to central desires. There are certain central desires in the mind. That's one of those fetters that the Buddha teaches. And the mind longs and yearns through the 6 sense bases, craving permanently agreeable contact. And when there's disagreeable contact through the tongue, wanting certain flavors, then you're repulsed by those. So when you're eating and you taste a certain flavor that the mind's like, oh, I don't really like that. You should actually eat that more and train the mind to get to the point where you're not repulsed by any flavors whatsoever, that you just see food as something to sustain the body. What the unenlightened mind is going to want to do because of its central desire is only gravitate towards foods that you enjoy. And then the foods that you don't like, you're going to push those away with aversion. But this is just keeping the craving in the mind. You would actually like to put the mind in the situation that it's experiencing this repulsion, and then train it to just look at the food as something to sustain the body. Food isn't to please the tongue and to please the mind. That's not the purpose of food. The purpose of food is to nourish the body. So more and more, if you look at food as to nourish the body, then you should be able to get to the point where you can eat any and all foods. Then you're never going to be disappointed or frustrated or agitated, no matter what type of food that you actually eat. You can eat any and all foods. So that's what the Buddha's describing here, is why you're reborn into the animal realm. But then in other teachings, he's helping you to learn how to eliminate central desire from the mind. This particular aspect of what he's teaching is related to the tongue and flavors. And you're going to need to eliminate central desire as it relates to every single sense base, whether it's the eyes, ears, nose, the tongue, the body, or the mind itself. So using Tonka's example from this class, when she was seeing these words on this page, she was reading certain words and she was noticing discomfort come up in the mind. You're going to need to put the mind in that situation in order to train it to be peaceful and joyful. Whereas if you push that away, the mind's going to hold on to that craving. So anytime you see any displeasure related to any of the six sense bases, whether it's the eyes or maybe it's the ears, maybe you hear certain sounds that you find to be displeasurable or dissatisfying, and your mind's wanting to push those away, like certain music. Listen to that music every once in a while. Train your mind to not be repulsed by it. This is how you ultimately eliminate central desire. You need breathing mindfulness, meditation, and generosity to be consistent and ongoing. And anytime the discontentedness arises, you need to cut it off and let it go. But then after you've done that, where you've proactively trained the mind with breathing mindfulness, meditation, and generosity, and you've cut off any discontentedness and eliminated it, then over a series of days and weeks and maybe even months, you're going to need to put your mind in the situation that it's experiencing this discontentedness with and train it to be content. So go places if you're, don't like crowds, for example. If you're afraid of crowds and you don't like being around a lot of people, put your mind in that situation occasionally so that it can train to be peaceful and joyful. If you don't like public speaking and you talking in public, you feel shy and embarrassed, you should do that more in order to train your mind to let any cravings go that are causing the mind to feel embarrassed, for example. This is all how you practice to get to enlightenment. And this is where you can see that it's not just meditation that's going to get you to enlightenment. You need meditation and you need to practice generosity, but you also need to put the mind in the situation that it's finding to be unpleasurable, and then overcome that craving and let that go so you can get to the peace and joy no matter what, whether your mind is experiencing a certain food or another certain food. So if you like sweet food and your mind is enjoying that, but when you eat sour foods, your mind is repulsed by it, you're going to need to eat some sour and bitter foods in order to train your mind to let go of that craving. And you need to do that over a consistent long-term period to gradually wear away any craving, desire, attachment in the mind. So let me know what questions you guys have on this chapter, where the Buddha is describing what leads to rebirth in the animal realm and the different types of existences within those realms. And then I also share with you how to eliminate your central desire related to the tongue, because that's what he's talking about here, that's going to lead to rebirth in these animal existences. Okay, Tonka has a question here. Does it mean that people that excite in food get reborn in animal realm? That would be most of the people. Most of the people in the world are unenlightened, Tonka. You're right. And there's a lot of people who get reborn down into these lower realms. But that's because the mind doesn't understand the Four Noble Truths. It doesn't understand central desire. It's not that you can't enjoy food, right? By the time you get to enlightenment and you eat something that tastes really wonderful, you're going to know that it tastes really, really wonderful, and you might even enjoy that. But what you're interested in doing is ensuring that your mind doesn't get conditioned pleasant feelings. Like, oh my goodness, yes, we're having tacos tonight. Oh, yes, 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 yes. Oh, tacos, tacos. Oh, I can't wait to get tacos, right? This is the mind having those excited, pleasurable feelings on the condition of eating tacos. But now, maybe when you eat, I don't know, now maybe when you eat broccoli, maybe the mind is like, oh, broccoli, I hate broccoli. I can't stand eating broccoli. Now the mind is experiencing those painful feelings. So if you allow your mind to get those conditioned pleasant feelings when you're eating something you enjoy, then you're going to feel these painful feelings when you're eating something you don't enjoy. And this is all because of craving. So if you learn to cut off the conditioned pleasant feelings, then you're not going to experience the painful feelings. And now you can reside in the middle, where when you're eating that chocolate cake, it's like, this is really good chocolate cake. It tastes quite amazing. But you're not allowing your mind to get conditioned pleasant feelings. Because then when you show up to the restaurant and they don't have your chocolate cake, if you've had conditioned pleasant feelings based on the chocolate cake, that means you're going to be sad and frustrated when they don't have your chocolate cake. But if you can eliminate the conditioned pleasant feelings and you can reside in the middle, where you show up to the restaurant, you order the chocolate cake, and they come back and they say, oh, sorry, ma'am, we don't have the chocolate cake today. You're like, all right, no worries. I'll get it another time. You can retain your contentedness. You can reside peaceful and joyful because you're not attached to it. But there's no harm in eating something and enjoying it. You would just like to be sure you're not having those conditioned pleasant feelings. And yes, there are a lot of people who are unenlightened in the world. This is why we see so many difficulties and struggles that individuals are experiencing. But if they learn these teachings and they train their mind, they can get to the point where they never again experience any discontentedness. And you can just enjoy life and have a very fulfilling life for the rest of your life, where you can learn how to enjoy things, but you're not getting conditioned feelings based on those things. Okay, Mayuli is asking a question here on Facebook. Animals that have more chance to be reborn into human realm, I'm assuming, are those that are herbivores, feed on plants. Am I understanding that correctly, sir? Yes, you're understanding that correctly. So like an elephant is a being who is very close to being reborn into the human world. They tend to be compassionate, they tend to be loving, they eat only plants, and they don't kill for food. And they very rarely even kill at all. It's possible for an elephant to kill, and those elephants that do kill, they're going to be reborn more in the animal realm and or into the hell realm. But elephants are a perfect example of a being who will oftentimes be reborn into the human realm. And this is why you see that elephants have an elongated lifespan. They have a longer lifespan than like a tiger or a snake. A tiger or a snake, a tiger or a lion, they only have like an 8 to 12 year lifespan, or a snake has like a 10 to 20 year lifespan, or an elephant can live like 80 years old or 100 years old, because the natural laws of existence, if you're repeatedly killing over and over and over and over again, you're going to have a shorter lifespan. Whereas if you're not killing, then you're going to have a longer lifespan. This is why turtles tend to have a very long lifespan, because they're not killing. But animals that have to kill for food, they have a very short lifespan, and they're going to be reborn countless times in the animal realm before they get to an improved animal existence, like a turtle or like a elephant, to then, in that existence, then potentially get reborn into the afflicted spirit realm or into the human realm or heavenly realm, to then be able to get closer and closer to enlightenment. So yes, you're seeing that 100% with the truth there, Mayuli. Okay, I'm not seeing any other questions anywhere. So next week, we're going to be studying chapters 31 through 40. And you're welcome to read those ahead of time if you like by downloading the books on buddhadailywisdom.com. You'll be able to see them there, that they're free to download. You can take it and go print it if you like, or you can get printed copies here at the temple in Chiang Mai, or you can order them through Amazon if you'd like. And if you read those ahead of time, you might have questions that you decide to ask in class. And you can also read them after class as well. And some people, they don't necessarily have the ability to read them before or after class, and they just come to class and they learn here. And that's fine too. But the more you read on your own outside of class, the more benefits you're actually going to receive through learning in the Pali Canon and English study group. Tomorrow is our group learning program. We're going to be in Volume 1, Chapter 17, which is titled Eliminating Fears. Are You Really Scared? So I'm going to help you to learn how to eliminate any kind of fear through that particular class. And once again, you can get the book and read that chapter before and or after class. It's a fairly short chapter, so you could probably read it in just maybe 10, 15, 20 minutes. And then on Wednesday, we're going to be doing loving kindness meditation together. And I'm going to open up to any and all questions that you guys have related to the path to enlightenment. So you're welcome to attend these classes on Sunday, Wednesday, and Saturday, either 9 a.m. or 9 p.m. Thai time. You just need to look and see what time that is in your particular time zone. So thank you, Kushi, for reading. Thank you all for your dedication and diligence to learning and practicing the teachings. Perhaps I'll see you guys in one of these future classes. We'll see you next time. Sawadee Kap. Thank you again for watching. Enjoy your meditation. Look forward to seeing you online and answering any questions that you might have. Thank you so much.